Hello everybody, welcome to today's tutorial talk. I'm Tonya McQuade. I'm going to be talking today about some of my own poetry and songwriting. April is just coming to a close, and April is National Poetry Month, which is always something I like to celebrate because poetry's been a big part of my life for a long time. I started writing poetry way back in elementary school and then continued writing a lot through high school and less, for a while, and it's kind of come and gone throughout my life, where some periods I was really prolific in my writing and other times I wasn't writing very much at all. But I'm going to share a few poems from different stages, and as well as some of the songs I've written, because many of my poems also will come to me as a song, and I'll hear a melody in my head, and so I usually compose on my guitar because it's a lot easier just writing down chords. Every once in a while I'll actually sit down at the piano though and notate some of the songs as well. So I'm going to start with a couple of poems from my high school days, which is when I started writing a lot. I took a creative writing class which inspired me quite a bit, and it's also when I started learning guitar my sophomore year of high school, and so I started writing a lot of songs then as well. And the first poem is, I put together this collection some years back to put a lot of my poems in one place. And this is a poem that I wrote about kind of the importance of being creative. It's called Schooltime Wisdom. Punctuate correctly and use your grammar well. Consult a dictionary if a word you cannot spell. 2 plus 2 is 4, and 3 times 3 is 9. Percentages and fractions fill the corners of my mind. Make sure you don't forget that great year 1492, for that's when Christopher Columbus sailed across the ocean blue. A body's made of organs, which in turn are made of cells, and a cell is just a home in which a tiny atom dwells. All this information has been planted in my brain. Through reading, writing, and arithmetic, true wisdom I'm to gain. But what of imagination and creativeness we hide? It's such a shame to waste the precious gifts we have inside. And so for me, creativity has always been essential. I'm happiest, I think, when I'm creating, whether it's creating poems, creating songs, creating scrapbooks, creating lesson plans, creating vacation plans. I like gathering information. I like processing it and putting it all down. And so to me, it's an important part of school that we also nurture our creative selves. So one of the things I did in high school was enter a contest where we were supposed to put together a book of some sort, and I did a book of poems, and it ended up winning grand prize in the contest. So this is the little book that they ended up publishing as a result. They made copies for all of the school libraries in Antioch, which is where I grew up. And the way they announced the winner was by reading one of my poems. And so I'm going to read the poem that they chose to use as the one for announcing the grand prize. It's called Outer Shells. A song came on the radio. The tune was quite offbeat. The words were thrown together in a way that wasn't neat. A boy who heard the music quickly turned the volume down. He didn't listen to the message. He just commented with a frown. It just ain't got no rhythm, and it sure ain't got no rhyme. If they call that thing a song, well, it sure ain't worth a dime. A woman walking down the street caught a young man's stare. He was not extremely handsome. Fancy clothes he did not wear. The woman only snickered and quickly made her way, thinking to herself, I'd not give him the time of day. What neither of them realized was the beauty was inside, the message of the music, the love a heart can't hide. If they'd only taken time to look beneath the outer shell, they'd have seen the hidden beauty and the secrets left to tell. We too often judge by looks, and we don't give new things a try. Who knows what we have missed as we let it pass us by? So some of my poems are about presenting a message, and obviously this one is one of those where it's a message about the importance of looking beyond the superficial, beyond the outside, and not judging a book by its cover. A lot of my poems in high school were much more personal. Lots of them were about who I loved, at that time in my life, or breakups and dealing with kind of the sad feelings that came with that. Others were, more serious. And so one of the other poems that I wrote from this time that I think was important to me was called Guitar Man. And so I played the piano for our church choir for a while, and I got to know some of the guitarists, and it really inspired me to want to learn guitar. And so this is one of the poems I wrote about that. Guitar Man. You touch it, and like magic, you shine just like a star. I'm caught up in the music of your beautiful guitar. The chords you play are speaking, the words seem so complete. My mind is almost hypnotized by your melodic beat. I'm swaying to the music, I'm dancing to the sound. In my heart I'm singing of this happiness I found. You fill me with your magic through the music that you play. So please don't let the music end and let the magic stay. And for me, music has always been an essential part of my life. I love listening to it, I love playing it, I love writing it, and learning guitar opened that up a lot for me because it was an instrument I could carry along with me, unlike my piano, and so I took it to college and I continued playing there. And I was really inspired by John Denver's music and his focus a lot on nature, and so nature's always been really important to me, and so many of my own poems and songs have dealt with that, and his style of writing also had a big influence on me. Now, one of my favorite ones that I wrote in high school is one that many of you already read, The Sun Will Shine Again, so I'm not going to read that one now, but that one, I really liked the optimism that I was able to capture with that one, and I've shared that poem with several of my friends through the years, just to remind them to look for the sunny day that would come eventually after kind of hard times. So that was my high school period, and I did write some songs, and I'm going to add some song links later. I'm not going to try to film all of this in one long thing, so you can listen to some of the songs if you're interested. But then I didn't write a lot in college, and once my kids were little, it was hard to do much writing. But one of the poems I wrote, I ended up writing kind of in the middle of the night. A lot of my poems and songs actually would come to me in the middle of the night when I'd wake up and I couldn't sleep, and my brain would fill with words. And so this one was actually one that I wrote when I was pregnant with my first child, my son, and in the middle of the night he was kicking me, and so I couldn't sleep. And so I wrote this poem, and it ended up getting published in this book, America at the Millennium, by Poetry.com. And so this is a song called New Life, or a poem called New Life, so I'm going to read this one for you. A twitch, a flutter, a kick. Each one assures me you are inside, alive and strong and growing, a bud soaking in the sunshine that will cause you to bloom into full maturity, a wave gathering strength as you prepare to break upon the shores of life, a raindrop gently falling to earth, inevitably to join with the pools of humanity, a baby tenderly being knit together in your mother's womb, a mother eagerly and anxiously awaiting the sound of your cries, the thrill of your touch, the warmth of your embrace, and the joy of your love. So that was an example of a free verse poem that I wrote. And so a lot of my poems have rhyme and meter, but not all of them do. I like to experiment with different styles, but for my songs, usually those have rhyme and meter. So that was a poem I wrote many years ago. My son will be 25 in June. And then I had a period where pretty much the only poems I was writing were my annual Christmas poems. Instead of sending out a Christmas newsletter, I send out a poem. And then about 4 years ago, I signed up for a poetry workshop through Los Gatos Recreation Department, and it got me writing again. And it also got me introduced to the poetry community in San Jose and in the larger Santa Clara County. And so since then, I've been part of a writer's group. I've been attending many of the local open mic nights to read my poems and also to sing some of my songs. And I've done a lot of writing in these last 4 years. So that summer I took the workshop, I was traveling quite a bit that summer. My husband and I were going to Yellowstone and to the Tetons and to Point Reyes and Bodega Bay and a lot of national parks. And I ended up writing a lot of poems about those experiences. And it inspired me to actually make a list of all the different national parks and historic parks I'd visited. And so I ended up writing a lot of different poems, and I made a book called Park Love. And I like to incorporate pictures as well, photos to go along with my poems. And so here on the cover you see a photo of my husband and me standing by a fallen redwood tree. But it's in black and white, so that one's hard to see. But here's another one from when we went to Yellowstone to a place called Trout Lake, and it was just gorgeous. We were there at the perfect time to get the reflection on the water. And so the photo is actually much larger than the poem here. It's a simple haiku. Trout Lake. Perfect reflection. Clouds, mountains, trees coalesce. Breathtaking beauty. And so some of my poems are very simple like that. Now, another poem I wrote about national parks was actually about my hiking boots. So I don't know if you're a hiker, but we like to spend time hiking and do a lot of trails, and I wear the same hiking boots. And so as I was staring down at my tired, dirty feet one day, this poem came to me, and so I called it These Boots. These boots have kicked up dust on many trails, traversed through national parks, climbed crags and hills, crossed flowing streams over rocks and wooden rails, strolled 'neath tall redwood trees, past dormant mills. These boots have hiked around cold mountain lakes and into rocky canyons hot and dry. They've stepped o'er holes of gophers, squirrels, and snakes, spanned grassy meadows filled with flowers high. At Crater Lake they trekked to Cleetwood Cove. The Rockies' Huffer Hill they did ascend. Through Yellowstone's calderas they did rove, and to the Teton's hidden falls did wend. At Pinnacles they entered Balcony's cave. The mist trail at Yosemite they scaled. In Bodie they walked past each ghostly grave. Through Joshua Tree's oasis they have sailed. These boots my feet have faithfully protected from rocks and branches, snow and mud and dirt. Scrapes and twisted ankles they've deflected, and also staved off blisters that would hurt. These boots with me have traveled many miles, adventuring to places far and wide. They've shown me sights that oft have brought me smiles, breathtaking views of beauteous countryside. These boots were made for walking, Nancy sings, but I don't think she had these boots in mind. These boots don't walk on others, they have wings to help me soar through nature unconfined. I think a pair of boots each person needs, not only for their feet, but for their soul. For on earth's beauty every spirit feeds, and in that wondrous feast we're all made whole. Now, you may or may not have understood the reference to Nancy Sinatra, who sang a song called These Boots Were Made for Walking. That's what that little reference was. But it just struck me that these boots have served me very well, and I continue to plan to hike in them for many years to come. Now, you read a couple of the other poems that were in that Park Love anthology, the one I wrote about national parks being America's best idea, and another one about John Muir. And so many of my poems aren't just about my personal experience. I do research, I learn about the park, about its history, about the people that helped to establish it, and I incorporate that research into my poems as well. So sometimes it's me just pouring out my heart, other times it's me processing news, information, other experiences that I want to share. Now, one that's more personal is this poem that I wrote called Where Do I Live? And this is sort of a who I am poem for me. Where do I live? I live in kitchens where I prepare meals, wash dishes, and where family and friends gather when they visit. In dining rooms that more often serve as an office than a place to eat, though on special occasions serving as a showroom for the fancy china. In living rooms where I sometimes relax with a glass of wine and escapist TV. In bedrooms where I prepare myself for the day, sleep, and fight insomnia at night, and muse on the events and worries of the day to come. I live in scrapbooks filled with smiles, family and friends, vacations and holidays, school concerts and plays, all telling my story and my family's story through the decades. I live in poetry, where my thoughts pour out, emotions boil forth, deep fears are expressed, saddest moments are relived, joys are captured, and hopes and dreams are shared. I live in classrooms surrounded by books, posters, inspirational quotes, and students staring at me, wondering what we are going to do each day, where I strive to present lessons that will not only make them better writers and readers, but better human beings. I live in piles of papers, literary analyses of the Odyssey and To Kill a Mockingbird, research papers on the Roaring Twenties, modern-day slavery, personal reflections on deep thoughts and life experiences, poetry that can make you smile, make you cry, and make you laugh. I live in my children's hopes and dreams, their successes and failures, their important decisions and missed opportunities, their joys, fears, laughter, and tears. I live in my husband's love, his welcoming arms and embrace, his protection and security, his work ethic and sense of adventure, his kind words, acceptance, and forgiveness. And I live in God's light, his patience, grace, mercy, compassion, and love. So that's a much more personal kind of a poem that I wrote. Now, sometimes the news inspires me, and one of the issues that I care a lot about is gun violence and gun control and the need to have laws, reform in our society so that we cut down on school shootings and violence. And so one of the poems I wrote is a sonnet called Amazing Kids, and this was after the shooting in Parkland and the students rising up and becoming leaders calling for gun reform. Amazing kids. Amazing kids, their childhoods ripped away by violence they should not have to bear, are raising voices now for all to hear, proclaiming there must be a better way than classroom drills preparing for the day when at their school a shooter may appear, and arming teachers who, though filled with fear, would be expected gun skill to a display. These strategies ignore the basic ill of guns too easily purchased, too oft used, both planned and accidentally to kill, and many times for suicide abused. When will our leaders find the needed will to change our laws and help our kids so bruised? So that's an example of me processing the news. Another example last year that I was really proud of was a song I wrote called Phoenix, and it reflected on the fires up in Paradise and the way many people's lives were torn apart, losing homes, the whole town burning down, lots of people dying. And it was a song that, again, I started writing in the middle of the night. And I had also just rewatched one of the Harry Potter movies, and the phoenix plays a role. As you know, it's the bird that burns up but then rises again, and it also has healing tears when it cries. And so that all found its way into the song. And we ended up using that song for our teacher talent show last year, Fractured Follies. And we were raising money for the victims of the fire. And so I wrote a song called Phoenix, and I was able to incorporate Mr. D.W., who played guitar with me, and another teacher who played violin, and several others who sang backup, and then Mrs. Ware was one of the dancers for it. And so I'm also going to be posting the link to that song so you can watch the Fractured Follies video from last year. And the chorus, I'm just going to read for you. It said, "From this heaping pile of ashes, like a phoenix we will rise, blazing brightly like the sun, with tears of healing in our eyes. Though now we may see darkness and the future may seem dim, we know the sun is out there and soon a new day will begin." And so it talks about the difficulties that people experience. It talked about, for us, the biggest impact was the bad quality of air, but that represented their lives. And so that image of the smoke in the air being the embers of their lives, that's what really motivated that song. So I'm going to post, like I said, a few links to some of my songs, and if you're interested, you can listen to those. Thanks for tuning in for this tutorial talk, and I hope that you've enjoyed the poetry I've shared. Thanks.